Welcome to Picks with the Professor, the show where a real statistics professor and his friends give you sports betting tips. I'm your host, Professor Sides, and I've built some mathematical models named Sideline that predict various sports outcomes. You'll know more about the baseball models during the course of this episode. Let's cover 4 Major League Baseball games scheduled to be played on Thursday, May 4th, 2023. You guys should here, check out the webpage on the banner. It's www.pickswiththeprofessor.com/new for some explanations and community rules. Reminder, if you're interested in projections and picks for every single game, sign up on Dub Club. That link is in the show description. Even if you're not there, still thrilled to have you here. Remember that sports are unpredictable, so the discussion of this show projects a typical game and does not try to forecast it to a T, as that would be a foolish and impossible goal. Take a long-term view around here and don't get distracted when all those weird baseball things happen. It balances out in the long run, but it's just hard to foresee before it happens. In other words, please understand that good and bad variance will occur. So as much as I'd like to say it'll be profitable every single day, that is an impossible reality for any gambler. Cousin Jared, usually I feel like in the intro, I watch enough baseball that I can talk about some weird baseball things that have happened. Maybe you can tell us a weird baseball thing that's happened. Last night, I was at the Stars playoff game, and I feel like with life craziness, I have not watched a lot of baseball in the last, 4 days. I feel like I've got the itch to watch some baseball. What's crazy happening? I feel like there's things. I just can't even think of them right now.
The only thing I would draw attention to is something that you tweeted about yesterday, I believe, that the Oakland Athletics pitching is a level of bad that I'm not sure that we've seen. Maybe the tail end of the college football teams, like the 130th ranked college football team. Maybe they've been that level of ineptitude. In any professional sport that we've covered, I don't know if I've seen any team that's just been as bad as the Oakland pitching has been.
Yeah, and the other 29 teams are playing. We talked about this a lot on the Discord. Kind of like we expect. There's some ups and downs. Some teams are having good starts and bad starts, and some bullpens are struggling. But every bullpen's going to struggle. It's just you kind of notice it. Like we talked the Braves bullpen. Braves bullpen's much better than they've shown. They've struggled for sure. You can't change that. Every bullpen's going to struggle. It's just if it happens in April, it looks really bad. The ones that are going to struggle in June or July, when we're barely, people are half paying attention. We've lost half our audience because people are just tired of baseball by then, right? You won't notice it as much because they've already banked some good starts. So every kind of the other 29 teams are kind of just fine. The A's, though, are they trying to? Are they actively trying to lose? Did the Astros actively try to lose back when we were watching?
Well, I mean, yes, the A's are actively trying to lose. Did you not pay attention to any of their transactions over the offseason? Yes, they are trying to lose, but they are just doing it in spectacular fashion.
They are. They really are. As someone, of course, made the joke recently. I believe it was like in the Braves game, like Sean Murphy's hitting a home run and Matt Olson's hitting a home run, and someone on Twitter was like, "Man, imagine those two guys in the same team and Matt Chapman and Sonny Gray, like." What a team that would be, making the joke, of course. And it's we'll move on from that topic. I have one other question that I want to ask you, just based off the recent results. It's something that's been on my brain here. How do you, I think we all kind of love the A-grade plays, right? Other than the A-grade plays, which are the best value, it doesn't mean they're the highest likely to win. They're just the best long-term value. It's dogs that are, got great value, or even favorites that just should be priced way higher. And it's just like, let's bake that money, right? Other than the A-grade plays, how do you treat the B and the C-grade plays specifically? Do you kind of look through them and play more of the Bs than the Cs, or do you just don't even touch them at all? Like, what's your strategy for people who are looking at the B and the C grades and kind of seeing some ups and downs? Like, how would you recommend them handle that?
Yeah, so I usually play most of the Bs, not always. Kind of went into this last week, but if I just see a team that has been playing terribly as of recent, playing a team that I feel like is hot, if I see a pitching matchup that I think this is just like a terrible matchup. You mentioned, I can't remember, it was last season, about I think it was the Giants maybe that were a lot better against lefties than righties. If there's something like that off the top of my head that I know about, I kind of try to utilize that a little bit. For the most part, I still play most of the B plays, but I will scale my wagers on a team that I don't feel as great on. So usually play the B plays kind of like how you recommend, but sometimes I'll scale a B play down to a C play. A lot of the C plays, I'll be honest with you, I can only consume so much baseball in one day. Some of the C plays, if it's not something that immediately sticks out to me, like for example, today, like a game that we're going to talk about, the Orioles, like them, it's a C grade. I'll probably play them because I like them. So anyway, but that's just a little, just a little leading there that, hey, maybe we have a play on that game that's not related to the side. So you'll have to stick to that the rest of the show and see.
There you go. Ignore the thing we talked about with the A's. So let's ignore that because that little foreshadowing on that one. Say that again.
I'll bring it back up.
Yeah. The last thing I just want to mention for the viewer, I know we've talked a little bit on Discord over the summer. As I have more time, I am really going to dive deep into the data, pull a lot of the data from this year, and track line movements and try to give people some better ideas based off what the data has shown about fading line movements and different things like that. I'm working on a college football paper right now where we're kind of looking back on last season's data and doing that. We'll do the same for baseball. I think it's going to be a lot of interesting information. So stay tuned for that, viewer, coming over the summer. I'll tweet out some of that information. We'll talk about it on show, where I think it can provide some value. There's a lot of good questions people have asked me. I think it's a great question. I'm excited to dive in and do the research to answer that question. Unfortunately, some of these questions you can't just think for an hour and figure it out. It takes a little bit more work than that, but they are on the to-do list to try to help people figure out line movements. That's another question about playing at this and the line moves and how do you handle that. Right now, I don't have great answers, but I will have some better answers of how the model handles that over the summer. But otherwise, we'll get to today's slate here. But before we do, some quick reminders. Please hit that like button if you're on YouTube. Also, if you aren't yet, please consider subscribing or following. It's free. And if you turn on notifications, you won't miss any of the college basketball, MLB, or college football content that this channel provides. Talking about A-grade moneyline plays, returning 4 units, B3, C2. I actually got that displayed on the screen today. I've done some upgrading, so I'm excited to unveil that. So I don't have to talk about it, but you'll see it. And people who are like, I'm still not understanding, you will see it on the screen. Let's get to it. But as always, take what you like and leave the rest. Because we were talking about this, only one evening game. That's a 6 p.m. Eastern start. A lot of early games here on Thursday. Good opportunity to, take out the significant other, spend some time with the kids, with the parents, with the friends, or just binge Netflix and say, screw other people. I just don't want to watch baseball. I want to catch up on. I got a lot of shows to catch up on personally, right? You got a lot of options here on Thursday night. Yeah. All the day games. 1:10 p.m. Eastern, Mets at the Tigers. You can see it on the screen. Look at that. B grade, Tigers plus 160, risking 1.15 units to win 1.85. That adds up to 3. That's how I do the B grade plays. Want them to add up to a little bit less than the A grades because the value isn't quite there. This is a fantastic match, in my opinion. Justin Verlander making his season debut against Eduardo Rodriguez, who has looked lights out so far to start the season with a 2.21 ERA. The advanced metrics, of course, have him a little bit higher than that, but still a very good pitcher. Gets a 90 grade. That's almost a full standard deviation, better than league average. Gonna play the Tigers here at plus 160 because the model says it should be 155. So a little bit of value here as the Tigers can win this almost 40% of the time. You have some extra variability with Verlander's first start. Have no idea how that's going to play out. Some guys come out in a situation like this and look fantastic early on. Some guys don't. Verlander being a little bit older. Looked great last year. Obviously, you and I both know as Astros fans, when is that going to fall apart? This year, next year, the year after? Who knows? It's going to happen eventually. But just a lot more question marks there for him. Decent chance to take the dog in the Tigers. And the other reason to talk about this game is the total. I'm loving this under 8 here as the projected total from the model is 6.5. Ball flew a little bit here on Wednesday in the first game in Detroit. Wind was blowing out on a cool day. And the wind really played a huge factor in that, getting some extra runs. Here we've got a different story. Wind will be blowing across to start off with, but by the end of the game, it'll be blowing in at over 5 miles an hour. Relatively chilly day in the low 50s, so the ball shouldn't carry quite as much as it did here on Wednesday. I think that's giving us good value here with 2 good pitchers. I like playing both of these because if Verlander struggles, then we got a great chance to cash a plus 160 ticket. If he pitches great, we got a great chance to catch the under, and we still might get a Tigers 2-1 win or something like that. The Mets, of course, are one of those teams that have a lot of left-handed bats, so might struggle with a lefty in Eduardo Rodriguez. Cousin Jared, what are your thoughts on this one?
Come on, is anybody going to guess where I'm going with here? Of course, I'm playing the under 8 here as well. Eduardo Rodriguez, like you mentioned, great start to the season against, in my opinion, an inconsistent Mets lineup. Justin Verlander, it was, he kind of defied time for a long time. And I thought surely after the Tommy John thing, he was going to come back and he just wasn't going to quite be his same self. Yeah. I don't know what we would have what we could possibly think in our minds that he's not going to come back and look just as good after this latest injury. It wasn't Tommy John. I'll be honest with you. Was it his lat? I don't know exactly what it was. But whatever it is, can't be as bad as Tommy John. And right. So I think he's going to come back, and I think he's still going to be just as good. So I love the under 8 here as well. I think you're getting a lot of value with 2 really good pitchers.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the Tigers offense can struggle, especially in a park that's still, I think, pretty neutral overall. Wind blowing out, wind blowing in matters, of course. And that's what we kind of saw on Wednesday. But still a kind of neutral park. It used to be a big pitcher's park. And of course, they moved those fences in a little bit, which is going to help give a few more runs. But 8.5 just seems, or it should be 8 runs seems like way too many here in this type of game. Feels like a sleepy afternoon game. A good day to get out to the ballpark if you can handle low 50s in what should be a pitcher's duel in Detroit.
I'm going to guess that game goes by quickly. That's just going to be my guess.
Yeah, I would think so. This has definitely got a good chance of being one of those 2.5 hour games, 2:20 games, one of those like that just kind of flies through.
Yeah.
Also at 1:10 p.m., Pirates of the Rays. Folks, that is not a typo. This is the A+ play of the day. Second time we're putting it on show. Usually it's reserved for Dub Club. You can see there the risk plus the win adds up to 5. Usually the A grades add up to 4. I have the A+ play of the day add up to 5. Cousin Jared, I'm making an exception for you here because you just wanted to talk about this game so bad. And so I said, fine. I said, one off, we will make this allowance and we will put the best play of the day on show for the people. Cousin Jared, why were you so excited to talk? I don't even know. Why were you so excited to talk about this game?
Because I love the Pittsburgh Pirates. That's why I want to talk about this game. I mean, we've talked about it multiple times on the show. The second best team in baseball, the Pittsburgh Pirates here. And let me tell you, though, folks, the Pittsburgh Pirates are the second best team in baseball, not the first best team in baseball, because the best team in baseball are those Tampa Bay Rays. This game, I think, first of all, you're looking at a huge pitching advantage for the Rays. Vince Velasquez, we have plenty of experience with. When he's on, he's on. Problem is, most of the time he's not on, and it's really not great. So that's a number one thing, in my opinion. The second thing is, and I really want to use specific terminology here, I don't think that there is a bigger away field disadvantage than playing at the Trop, because there is nothing advantageous about playing your home games there. It's just more of a disadvantage for the away team to come in there. And of course, the Rays have been amazing at home this season. So as much as I love the Pirates, and I do love me some Pirates, this ain't the place, guys. This big of a pitching matchup, I think that it's a steal here, only laying 180 to get the Rays to win. I think this one is just not priced correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. It's a steal. I love that what you said. It's a bigger road field disadvantage. It's not a home field advantage, but it kind of is a home field advantage a little bit in that the Rays know about the weird white roof and how the ball carries there. The turf. There's only so many turf fields still in baseball. You can definitely count them on one hand. Off the top of my head, is there even one other one that's actual turf anymore? I feel like
I don't know.
It might be the only one at this point. So many more retractable roofs. There might be another one or two out there, but there's not many at this point. I guess the Rogers Center in Toronto would still be probably a turf, but yeah, there's not many. So yeah, that home field advantage helps them, not because the fans whatsoever, but because of the track, the roof just being a little bit different. And so the other thing that players have talked about, sometimes it's weird to go to a place like that that's kind of cavernous and empty. It can affect a road team because they're not used to that. The Rays are used to playing in front of nobody right there. So like you said, a huge home field advantage asterisk question mark for the Rays. They played really well at home. They're a really good team. Like you said, the huge pitching mismatch here with Zach Eflin and Vince Velasquez. I think this is also partially mispriced because people look at the ERAs of these two guys and they say, oh, they're both around 3. But as you and I both know, Zach Eflin's a pretty solid pitcher, and Vince Velasquez has been very lucky. The underlying metrics, his ERA should be about a run higher. He's somewhere in the low 4s. We've talked about him before, somewhere between average and below average. When he's pitching well, he can at least be an average pitcher, and he's done that at times. He's looked good so far for the Pirates, but it's a different story facing this Rays team who for the first time in ages can hit really well. And I'm like you, I love the Pirates, but this is not the place for it here. Minus 180, I'm with you, is a steal. Just ekes into A grade category. It's my favorite A play of the day. And of course, the total on this one, 8 or 8.5, and the model is projecting 8.4. So not a total I'm focusing on, just going to stick to playing the Rays here. As I think this is, like you said, a steal here, risking a little over 3 units to win almost 2. 2:10 p.m. Eastern, Orioles at the Royals. Because is it just me, or I love putting these names together and calling them the Orioles?
The first one you had me, that one I'm acceptable.
Okay.
The others, the others too much of a mouthful.
Not Roy Orioles. That's too much.
No, that's too much.
Okay. If you put these two teams together, you'd have a much better baseball team. That's the old joke, right? The Orioles actually are good, of course.
Yeah,
right. Yeah. And the Royals, unfortunately, still not. We're gonna play the Orioles here at -164, only C grade value because Sideline says it should be -156. So you can see this play adds up to 2 units, risking a little over 1 to win just under 1. I don't know. I feel like I'm tired of saying this, but for the most part, like back the Orioles, fade the Royals. It's not going to work every single night, but in general, it's working for us. And I don't really think we should change. I think this Orioles team is pretty solid. Grayson Rodriguez versus Jordan Lyles. Speaking of former Astros pitchers, at least Velasquez has hung on to being okay and serviceable at times. Yeah. Lyles, 6.11 ERA on the season, and the advanced metrics say that's pretty accurate. And that's not good.
No.
Grayson Rodriguez has actually been unlucky. His ERA should be around 3, according to his underlying metrics. I think it's a big pitching edge from the start. Royals bullpen, not bad, but still not as good as the Orioles. And, of course, the Orioles offense is better on the road, but I still think the Orioles are the play here. And, of course, let's get us an over here. The projected total is 10.4, so we're going to play over 9.5, upper 70 degrees with the temperature and the wind blowing out between 10 and 15 miles an hour. Kauffman can play very hitter-friendly, so over is the play, as well as maybe a side little bit on Baltimore. Because, what do you got?
So this is one of those C grades that does get my stamp of approval. So I would fully endorse a play on the Orioles here. But I'm like you. I'm joining you on the over here. People in Discord are going to be shocked that I'm going to be on an overplay. But I like the over here as well. To your point, Lyles has been very bad so far this season. I think, obviously, when we think of runs in baseball, you think of Coors Field, and you think of the hot summer days at Great American Ballpark in Cincinnati. You think about the ball flying out. Kauffman is another one of those things where it gets hot during the summer. You get the wind blowing out. There could be a lot of runs at the stadium. So we're starting to see that time of year where the temperature is starting to go up a little bit, and you're going to see some of these parks really turn into some run producers. And so there might be some value here on overs as we kind of head into the summer. I think this is going to be a perfect example of that. I think that there's going to be a lot of runs in this one. So let's play the over here.
Yeah, and of course, talking about the ball flying out a little bit more than last year, always talking about which ball Major League Baseball is using. Obviously, the ongoing saga, right? But we've seen the ball have a little bit less drag this year. That's created home runs and increased based off what we expected, based off the weather and comparing to years past and the blah, 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 science and math, right? That we've got going from like around, I believe, 4% of at-bats hitting a home run to about 5%. That's ignoring Mexico City as well, because that was a weird situation as well. But that's also going to help on a day like today with the wind blowing out. A little bit less drag is going to get you a little bit extra carry, turn a couple of warning track fly balls into home runs. And like you said, some of these Kauffman, Fenway, another one, of course, that when it gets warmer, you're going to see some games with like 15 runs in them. It's going to get pretty wild, I think.
What other sport can get away with like just using different balls, and everybody's just kind of like just accepted it at this point? Like, I mean, what if this happened in football, or what if this happened in basketball? I mean, it would be like they would never stop talking about it. But in baseball, we've kind of been like, we don't really know what balls are being used, but hey, we like watching baseball.
There's a Tom Brady joke in there somewhere, but I don't know if I can make it. But yeah, no, I completely agree. It is really weird. Baseball's always been interesting in that they're the only sport that's like, you know what, who cares what size your park is? Like, no big deal, right? And there are some variants in hockey and soccer where they let them use slightly different, size fields, of course, but that's minimal compared to the baseball weirdnesses that you see. But it is a good point. I keep trying to draw light to it because I think it's ridiculous. I can't believe people are just accepting it. But here we are, and like I said, when you look back on April, comparing this year's April to last year's April, where there were so many low scoring games, and this year there were some low scoring games, there were some unders for sure, and the books kind of adjusted a little bit. But in general, on average, you saw an extra run or two per game. It seemed like being scored. Comparing April to April, I think as it warms up, I think we're going to see some really high scoring games in the right combination of warmer weather, pitcher park, wind blowing out. And you're not quite there yet with this, but you're getting close. Pretty hitter friendly ballpark, almost 80 degrees, wind blowing out. Royals, again, like I mentioned, their pen not terrible, but this Orioles offense built to take care of business against a pitcher like Lyles could be a ton of runs.
There was a reason the Orioles let Lyles go.
Yeah, exactly. Wrapping us up here, 3:37 p.m. Eastern. Mariners at the A's. We're going to do the thing. We're going to take the A's. Plus 205. They're gonna win some. I believe, because Jared, I believe that's your thing on this, is like big plus odds. They're going to win sometimes. Let's find. And look, this is what I've been saying, right? We got to find the spots to take the favorites, find the spots to take the dogs. You don't ever want to take all or the other, because that's a recipe for disaster. It's trying to figure out where there's value. That's why I've built the model. Sideline says this should be Mariners minus 197. So anything with a 2 is kind of a non-starter for the Mariners. And once it gets above a 2, that's a decent play on the A's. B grade value here. We're going to risk slightly less than 1 unit to win 2. Drew Rosinski, who, pitched once already this season, wasn't terrible. Pitched overseas, coming back now. So he's a little bit older. He's not really a prospect by any means at this point. But if he's model projects him to be respectable, just league average, and a league average pitcher for the A's is a massive upgrade, as we've talked about previously with them. So if he's just league average, obviously the bullpen is the really hold your breath. Maybe you look at this and maybe you play A's first 5. Maybe you play A's in the run line. There's a couple different ways to look at this one. But you've got at least a league average pitcher for the A's, which you can't say all the time. George Kirby, obviously love the guy. Sub-3 ERA, the advanced metrics lineup with a great pitcher. That's part of the reason why I like the under as well, as the model projects 7.2. Seeing some 8s and 8.5s out there. Love the under 8, love the under 8.5, depending on how the juice lines up for you. I'd still be playing under 7.5 on this one. I don't think there's going to be very many runs scored at all in a big park in Oakland. Should be a nice day for what you usually see out there. Kind of chilly because it's the Bay Area, mid-50s. Slight breeze blowing out like you usually see, but nothing too crazy. Not a strong enough wind for pop flies to carry out, as the wind should stay around 5 miles an hour. So a model says let's take a chance with the dog here on at the home dog here in Oakland, and also loving the under. Cousin Jared, what do you got for us?
I have so many points to make about this game. I'm not sure that I can fit them all in. Just to recap a conversation we had last week, the professor is a robot. I'm only one step below a robot. So I completely understand if you cannot get the intestinal fortitude to back the A's here. That's completely understandable.
Yeah,
but where there's value, there's value. So that's obviously the number one thing for me. The other thing is, I know last week we talked about the Mets feel like being fairly disappointing based on the expectations they had. Me personally, I have been probably the most disappointed with the Mariners this year. I thought the Mariners were going to be better. As an Astros fan, if you ask me who I was worried about coming into the season, it was definitely the Mariners. So for me, this is just as much about there is value on the A's, but I think that the Mariners, just the way that they've been playing, I have not been impressed so far this season. It does pain me that I am fading my boy George Kirby. Here. He is very good. But I will remind you, his last start, the Mariners lost 1-0. So just because he has been pitching great, again, the rest of the Mariners have not been great at times this season. So I think there's just too much value on the A's to pass up here. I understand if you can't stomach it. But again, sometimes you got to hold your nose. I talked about it all offseason. You're going to have to back some bad teams like the A's at these big numbers. And I think you've got an opportunity to do so here.
It's a great point that if you're not backing bad teams every once in a while, you're doing it wrong. You're doing something wrong. Yeah. You're doing something wrong, period. Now, if you just decide to pass on those games, you're doing it less wrong. You are removing options from yourself. But if you're just always fading them, you're doing it wrong. You know, there's no other way to put it. Thankfully for us, the books haven't realized how bad like the Nats are, so we haven't had to back them very often. But the day's coming. We're going to back the Nats as well. I do think that we got to what I've been saying is we took so many favorites in April, way more than I ever would have expected, because of the fact that I thought the books just did not realize the discrepancy between the good teams and the bad teams. And I think with the A's, especially with all the attention that they've been getting, I think the books are like, oh, this team's really, really bad. So we're going to start seeing more value spots in the A's. We're going to end up winning like 1 out of 3 games. But hey, if we're playing them at plus 205, it's going to slowly increase our bankroll, right? As long as we're winning those 1 out of 3. Eventually it's coming with the Reds, with the Nats, with all the bad teams. You know, it's coming.
Buckle up, everybody.
Buckle up, everybody. We'll try to pick our spots and find the biggest value spots, of course, to back them. But again, with these bad teams, there are other ways to play it. Like I said, run line for the full game, run line for the first 5. Take them on the plus half. You know, you're probably looking about even money for the first 5 at plus 0.5. That way, if it is 1-1, 0-0, whatever, you still win. Maybe a little more gamble, take them on the money line in the first 5. That way, if it ties, you push. You got a lot of different ways you can play this one. And again, just as a reminder, you also have the under, the Mariners team total under. As well, some good looks, given like you said, they've struggled. They struggled, barely won on Tuesday night. Hopefully they can pull it out for us Wednesday because we're back going to begin pretty hard Wednesday. But you know, then maybe they'll lose another George Kirby start 1-0. That'd be the perfect setup, right?
Yep, exactly.
All righty, that's all we've got then for you today. Cousin Jared, any parting words?
Thursdays are sad because there's no night baseball. That's all I have to say.
Usually I feel like there's 1 or 2 games. This Thursday is like I said, take advantage of it, people, and enjoy it. If for those of you like us who, again, I've been missing it because life's been crazy, but I tend to watch a lot of baseball, then it is kind of nice every once in a while to have a night where you can focus on something else. But this one's a little bit unique. Usually I like having 1 game up at least. But the for us being in the Central Time Zone, that last game starting at 5 p.m., it'll be weird if all the games, especially if it's a fast game, all the games are over by like 7:30. That'd be really weird. I wouldn't know what to do with myself.
Yeah.
Watch hockey, I guess, at this point, right?
What else are you going to do?
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, thanks for tuning into this episode of Picks the Professor. Don't forget to subscribe so you can ensure the sports betting content provided on this channel is dropped right into your feed. I'll be back again tomorrow with more baseball betting content. And until then, as always, best of luck. And remember, you can get your betting money, but please don't bet your eating money.